In 2014, the SOC 2 Trust Services Principles were updated, and one of the major modifications is the security principle. It's really referred to now as having common criteria to all of the Trust Services Principles within the SOC 2 audit report. What that means is everything was condensed and the redundancies were taken out of the process so that we could focus on those common criteria that applied to any of the principles, so that a service organization wouldn't have to repeat themselves over and over again throughout the report. And the security principle is really a must to have in your SOC 2 audit report because of that common criteria. It has to be included in a non-privacy principle SOC 2 audit engagement. And there are 7 categories within the security principle. There is organization and management. How is your company structured? How do you oversee the services that you perform? Communication. How do you communicate to internal and external users about how your system works? And how do you communicate about policies and procedures and expectations? Risk assessment and management of those risks through the implementation of controls. How does your organization select the controls that you put in place to meet the criteria? It has to be done through some type of risk assessment in order to determine what controls are necessary to address the risks that you are dealing with. The thing that follows up to that is the monitoring of those controls. Once you put a control in place, how do you monitor it to make sure that it's effective and that you don't need any changes or remediation if a control becomes ineffective? And that's done through monitoring. There's also logical access and physical access to sensitive information and systems. How do you control access, whether it's entering a door into a sensitive area that may be controlled by some type of a card reader or lock and key, and also logical access. Are there passwords? Are there requirements for identifying the user before they access the system? And then also we've got system operations, which has to do with your day-to-day processing. What are your procedures? What do you do on a daily, weekly, and monthly schedule in the execution of your services? And then lastly, we would be looking at change management, which is when you have to make changes to your system or your service that you're providing. How do you document those changes? How do you test them? How do you evaluate the risk? How do you approve them in order to make sure that those changes are well documented and approved prior to making the change into the environment? So these are some areas to think about as you prepare to be audited against the security principle, because that criteria will be very important in order to have in place for your auditor to review.